In a world where woodworking DVDs have been known to put people to sleep, two heroes emerge to shine a light of truth on your woodworking library. Welcome to Wood Talk Online Review Show.
On today's show, we're going to take a look at Unlocking the Secrets of Traditional Design with George Walker. It's a single DVD clocking in at 68 minutes, and it's produced by Lie-Nielsen. It's available for $25 at Lie-Nielsen.com. Now, remember, we evaluate the DVD on the following attributes: entertainment value, production quality, information quality, overall value, and whether or not it keeps its promise. So with that out of the way, here's a description from the back of the DVD case.
Unlocking the Secrets of Traditional Design with George Walker. Furniture is pleasing to the eye when various elements work together to create a harmonious whole. 18th century furniture design, like architecture, relied heavily on proportional schemes derived from classical architectural orders. Today's furniture makers can use these design principles to create contemporary or period furniture. George Walker demonstrates how to use this approach to create visual harmony. And then we just talk about the chapters itself, which are intro, training the eye, proportions, practical use of traditional design. And of course, we're going to get more into those as we start the review, which I think we're going to do right now.
I think we are. It's a good time for it, so we may as well.
Yeah.
All right. So, let's just jump right into the review sections. Entertainment value overall, not really that important of a category, but I think you have some specific thoughts on how entertaining or not entertaining this DVD was.
This for me was definitely, I'm not a big Shakespeare person, but I imagine if we were to compare it to other DVDs that we've watched for the review show, this is very much like the deepest, most provoking Shakespeare play ever. And so the George Walker is at that level.
You do sort of get the feeling that you should have a glass of wine, and not just any wine, like a really good wine in your hand as you watch this. It's definitely a higher level sort of thing. It's not the typical stuff that we review, and that works, I think, in its favor and against it in some cases, and that kind of depends on your perspective and who you are. I know for me personally, while it wasn't entertaining in the sense of like, laughter or what we typically might look for as sort of a contrast to a boring woodworking topic, it was, for me, incredibly entertaining. And we'll get into the production value stuff later, but it was incredibly entertaining because of the high value of production and the clarity with which the information was presented. So I kind of had that conflict where I was like, okay, kind of boring topic, but at the same time, this is so well done. I am enjoying it. I am enjoying what I'm watching.
Right. George definitely has everything together for the information itself, which of course we'll delve definitely into that. But it's like, do you ever have one of those professors in college or even in high school, if you were really lucky to have a really good high school teacher, that they've been teaching the subject so long, they have these great visual representations.
Mm-hmm.
They have all their stuff in order. There's no doubt about how they're going to proceed through this.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how this DVD went. Everything was right where it was supposed to be. There was great examples because a lot of this, this is definitely a topic that is, you really have to wrap your mind around it. And it's not necessarily going to happen at once. This is the type of thing that maybe after a few sittings, suddenly you're like, the light bulb finally goes off and it just snaps into place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of those things where visual aids make a difference, and also how the person explains it. And I think in the past when we've talked about just different design topics, or you go into a forum and ask questions of design, a lot of times they just kind of give you the standard, you got to do the golden ratio is like the first thing someone says. And then you get caught in this little circle of, crazy math that you're trying to do to perfect your designs and things like that. So, this was approached in a way that I think was so well thought out that it is the product of having to explain this to people over the course of years to find out what is the best way to explain this in a way that people can actually understand, digest it, and then use it. So that kind of shows in his presentation. So we touched on the production quality, and this is something that, this DVD, hands down, and I've said this in early episodes when I've referenced how we rate production quality, that this is the one that all other DVDs will be judged by. Just in terms of the way it was filmed, the way it was edited, the quality of the samples, examples, and the on-screen graphics and things like that, I have never seen something of this level before from the woodworking world.
Yeah, it is definitely thought way out ahead of time. They really knew how they wanted to get from point A to point Z, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and laid everything out, and they came up with great examples. Everything about the production of this DVD is excellent. If we were to give out some sort of Academy Award or something, they definitely would be up for it.
No doubt about it. I mean, just the overhead visual of him drawing, because you think about that, and I've tried to film myself drawing something on a piece of paper before, and that's not a very easy thing to do, to get the perspective right. But a lot of what George does is drawing out a sample diagram of a piece of furniture showing how these proportions work, and the overhead is just perfect. The lighting is perfect. You could see everything that's going on, and anytime you need to see something special, they want to draw your attention to something, they do an overlay graphic that shows what they're trying to show you. So it's if we can say the word perfect in this show to rate something, I would say in terms of production quality, perfect.
I would have to agree with you on that. No doubt about it.
And that said, far greater quality and sort of production value than is truly necessary in most woodworking videos. Like, we don't necessarily need that much in terms of bells and whistles, because really doing that kind of adds to the expense of the DVD. And although it's welcome, it might also be considered somewhat unnecessary, because you can get the information across without that stuff. But in this case, when it is a fairly boring topic, something like design and ratios and a lot of math, it is something that the production quality does seem to make it a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, definitely. They went out and they found somebody who was able to digest this in their mind and figure out, okay, this is the best way to represent it.
Mm-hmm.
This is like Scorsese kind of do something like this for you,
Yeah.
where it's like, all right, this is really, really abstract. Let's do it. Let's have fun with it.
Yeah, totally. All right. So information quality. For me, this was probably, in addition to production, it's one of the things I found most compelling about it is the fact that, most design conversations surround, really, if you just go to the surface level of what most people talk about, it's proportions, but they typically talk about the golden ratio. And that's where things kind of immediately get boring for me. Because I'm like, you know what? I don't want to divide, multiply by a number. How long is this line? And then compare it to that line and this and that. What I do like about the way that George presents the information is he focuses much more on the concept of whole number ratios, which really, that for me was a light bulb going off. And it really was music to my ears, because when I design something, I don't really want complex math, but whole number ratios suddenly is a lot more digestible. And I could say, okay, well, if a table is this long in this dimension, if I just look at what does this ratio 2:1 look like for this rectangle, what does 3:1 look like? And if I'm designing moldings and drawer spacings, that type of information I find absolutely invaluable. It was a great perspective on classic design that I don't really think I've seen presented anywhere online or anywhere that I've looked for this information before in such a concise way.
Yeah, I have to agree. There was the one chapter, in fact, the second chapter in here is referred to as training the eye.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what he talks about in there. It was like when you're looking at the proportions, or actually, I should say he leads into proportions by talking about training the eye. And it's funny because I never really ever have looked at design as anything more than just simply, well, I know this is what I want the end product to be, so therefore I'm just going to fill in things to kind of make that end product
Mhm.
work for me. And now I've looked at pieces I've built in the past based on this idea of the proportions, the whole number proportions, and I keep saying, I always knew there was something wrong with the way that this final thing turned out. And now I understand why, if I had just maybe adjusted this height just a little bit more, or
Yeah.
maybe if I had played with this drawer here just a little bit more, I would have gotten the look now that I realized that I really wanted what was always lacking. And you're right, the fact that he kind of breaks it down to this whole number idea is just fantastic, because I don't know how many times using the golden rule or any of those other ones out there that everybody throws out, like the Fabriconi's principle or something like that.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, I just want to make a simple little like 2 or 3 drawer dresser, and apparently I have to divide everything by pi times what? I mean, it's ridiculous. But what he talks about in there with training your eye to see what looks right, and then understanding how that works with the proportions, it opens up a whole new world for me. And in fact, every time I go to design something now, that's what I'm always looking at is, if I put it into proportions, in the sense of proportions, how is this going to turn out? So this DVD really helped there, but getting there for me was definitely difficult. And the nice thing is, we haven't mentioned this yet, but there are a couple of free things with the information itself on the DVD. One of them is a glossary, which has all of the terms that George talks about in here. And that really, really helped me to sit down and digest each one of these chapters because apparently when it comes to design, I am really, really dense.
Yeah, I feel that way too. And I actually watched this DVD years ago when it first came out. And just getting the whole number ratios thing into my head and utilizing that over the last few years has been incredibly helpful. I mean, a lot of times you're thinking, okay, I want to build a chest of drawers. How thick should the legs be? How, if I want to graduate my drawers, what should the heights of those drawers be? And you start to think there's infinite options, right? So how do we start to narrow that down? And the process of narrowing it down based on things that make sense. So if your divider is fixed, because let's say you're using 3/4 inch material, you have a fixed size of that divider. Well, that is kind of your starting point on which you build upon to create the different heights of your drawers in those ratios. So the drawer heights will all be some ratio of the thickness of that divider. So that when it's all said and done, even though you may not necessarily have to really think about it too much, but if you start building upon that ratio concept, when it's all said and done, the final piece, maybe it could use some tweaking, but ultimately it would be better than if you just kind of pick those numbers off the top of your head and said, oh, this looks okay, I guess let's go with that. There's some sense behind your choices, and I think that's a huge thing that anyone can incorporate into their work.
Right. And another thing that he talks about in there, which to me, again, I guess maybe I never really paid attention to them, or if I did, I gave them like no weights whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
And in talking about the proportions, not only is there the whole thing with the whole number of ratios, but then you get into stuff like symmetry, contrast,
Yeah.
punctuation. Again, thankfully, I had the glossary terms with me so I could follow along with what he was describing. But to me, symmetry has always been the key for everything I've done. If I have one on the left, I need to have one on the right. And so this for me was almost like crippling when it came to design. But then when it came to things like contrast and especially punctuation, which, we're talking about borders here. And so maybe why you would have a frame and panel door, or maybe even why you might have some of those really haughty-taughty kind of like Victorian embellishments kind of a thing. To me, they were always just like, I guess they were trying to cover something up. That's why they put them on there.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the discussion, it's like, oh, this makes so much more sense because it really is adding something to the design.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very insightful stuff. All right. So overall value, this guy is priced at $25. For me personally, this is a reference library type thing. And for $25, if you've been struggling with design, you've been frustrated with the complicated ratios, just learning the concept of whole number ratios and how it can be applied in various different ways is absolutely worth twice as much as this. The quality of the production itself is really good. And the fact that, like we said, it's not the most entertaining thing in the world. You may have to sit down and watch it a couple times, but because of that, it is that kind of reference thing. You're going to want to pop it back in and look at it again and refresh your memory the next time you go to design your next piece of furniture. So for me personally, I think the value is off the charts on this one.
Oh, yeah, I have to agree. This is definitely a DVD that's going to lay a solid foundation for you, regardless of what level of design you are currently at.
Yeah.
If it's something that if you're looking for a quick fix, you want somebody to tell you that you have to do this length by this length, that type of thing. You're not going to find that in this DVD, but like you said, it's a reference to make you think a little bit more about your overall design so that you stop. Because if you watch the DVD, anybody that knows George, he doesn't use like any type of measuring tape. He uses all calipers, and that he actually shows that in the DVD. That's another huge thing. So yeah, this is like getting the entire Encyclopedia Britannica in one book for a tenth of the price.
There you go. All right, so keeping its promise, what do you think? Back of the Case makes some simple, modest promises. Do you think it didn't actually kept those?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There is no doubt about it whatsoever. I think they kind of looked into this. They did the video first, and then they came back and said, all right, tell them that we covered these things because for sure, these are what we covered. So what you see on the back of the case is for sure what you will find in the DVD. And to be honest, I think they just kind of scratched the surface on what else you're going to find.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so our final thoughts. I would say overall, great buy. And like I said, reference level. I think every woodworker, once you get to the point that you've built a few things based on a plan and you're ready to go to that next level to actually take a pencil and a piece of paper, or maybe you're using SketchUp and you want to make your own piece of furniture, where do you start? Something like this, I really think, is required watching, because it will get you set up to the point where you don't feel quite as lost and you don't feel sort of intimidated by what a lot of traditional design sort of resources will do for you. So it's definitely something I think every woodworker would benefit from watching.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't agree more with you. And we had an opportunity to see George at Woodworking in America a couple of years ago, and now I realize that was just like a teaser for what you'll find in this DVD.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I'll sum it up. Let's see here. Sorry, scrolling through my document. Design is one of those topics that woodworkers either love or hate. George Walker demystifies the concepts and ideas that were previously untouchable by the average weekend woodworker. His focus on simple whole number ratios will give even the this is not the normal time we record, not as fluent as I usually am. All right, so his focus on simple whole number ratios will give even the newest woodworker hope that they can design their own furniture with generally pleasing proportions. The DVD is masterfully filmed and edited, and you'll quickly find yourself forgetting that you're watching a woodworking DVD. Frankly, this is the highest quality woodworking-related production we have ever seen. In spite of this, the topic matter is still a little difficult to digest in one sitting, but it is definitely worth your time to do so. We feel that this DVD is a must-have for all woodworkers who want to delve into the world of design, and certainly deserves a space in your reference DVD collection. All right, so that's it. Remember that you can contact us at woodtalkonline@gmail.com, or just go to woodtalkshow.com and you could fill out the little form there, send us a message, and let us know what DVDs you would like us to check out in the future. And we do have 3 copies of this DVD to give away, and we'll do that within a few days after the posting of this show. And we'll pick a random winner from either the Facebook page or the posts that we actually post on our websites. If you leave a comment there, you'll be in the running. So we're going to keep it simple for you. So if you get an email from us, you'll know that you won one of these DVDs, and we have a total of 3 to give away, including our review copies. So you could look forward to the things that Matt has had on his hands will be on that DVD as well, and you just don't know what those things are.
I swear the one is not blood. It's totally raspberry jam. That's all it is.
All right, cool. Cool. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time on the review show.
See ya.